Up next, we're going to be discussing pathways to AI-enabled flourishing. This is going to be an exploration of how AI can contribute to human flourishing and positive growth, with a fireside chat between Dr. Emilia Javorsky from the Future of Life Institute and Lou Decay from the Foresight Institute. Please welcome on stage.
Do you have a mic?
No. Hello. Great.
Working? Yes.
Hi, Emilia.
Hi, Lou.
How are you doing?
I'm well.
Okay, fantastic. Well, maybe we can quickly introduce ourselves, or do you want to say a bit about yourself, and I'll introduce myself after.
Sure. So I'm Emilia Javorsky, and I direct the Futures program at the Future of Life Institute. So I think our institute is probably more well-known in this audience for our work on the risk side of technology. But sort of since our inception early on, I think of our first logo was a tree that was sort of dead on one side and green and leafy on the other side. And it's always been, how do we both steer away from risk and also steer towards benefit of emerging technology? And the program I lead is the piece that does the latter. What are the incentives, the policies, the tools, the technologies we need to realize the benefits that emerging tech has to offer?
Awesome, thank you. And hello, everyone. My name is Lou. I've been directing some programs at Foresight Institute for 8 years now, and so working on accelerating in a beneficial way frontier technology, including AI, neurotech, crypto, among some others, but those are the main ones for today. So there's also something else that we've been doing at Foresight that we call, and it's a big collaboration between Foresight Institute and the Future of Life Institute, that we are very grateful for, which is the idea of existential hope. So existential hope is a concept saying it's basically a twist on existential risk, right? Like risk to the continued existence or potential of humanity. Existential hope is, okay, where do we actually want to go? Like it's really important, of course, to look at the risks, but it's very important to know what we want to achieve in order to get there and establish a strategy that is functional and like working around the existential risk. And I think it's really nice to set the stage, to start with, where do you want to go? Like, where you, Emilia, what's your existential hope vision for, there is not the title of this panel, which is Pathways to AI-Enabled Flourishing. So what's your vision for AI-enabled flourishing? Like, why are we even here?
Yeah, I mean, I think the reason we're here, and I think in this room, it's really exciting to be, surrounded by folks that have a dream and a vision about where they want to go, and a vision that the future could be really bright and positive, and that we could steer towards that. I think in our sort of sociocultural imagination right now, that's lacking, and we need sort of to the existential hope work to cultivate those visions and share those visions to get people excited about what the future could be. And for my part, on the AI side, like it was touched on this morning of like all of the amazing things that AI could unlock for us. By training, I'm a doctor, what the potential it has in healthcare for health and disease, what it could do for personalized education, what it could do for inequity, what it could do to make us better, to augment ourselves, to eventually explore the cosmos. That is the vision I'm really excited about, and the thing that I'm worried about that will get in the way of that vision is, to a lot of Mihail's point, the incentive structures that are driving the technology development right now are not steering us towards that future. And so what are the ways that we can sort of look towards to get on another branch of the future that is steering towards that outcome? And I think when we see the amount of sort of capital going into this by private companies and a handful of companies sort of leading this in an arms race. There's definitely incentives here to sort of just capture the value humanity has already created and centralize that, as opposed to create new value and unlock new capabilities and end up in a very like generative, exciting ecosystem.
Okay, well, let's dive into that then. Like, what do you think are viable strategies to work around these challenges and like these incentive structure problems? What is FLI doing that seems like, you know, the right approach to you? Yeah.
Yeah, so I think there's a few things here. One, in the audience that we're in today, we are gonna have a profound opportunity to rewrite everything, in the sense that like so many existing assumptions of existing institutions and governance mechanisms, the way our economy functions, the way we make decisions and collaborate and cooperate is going to be fundamentally changed. And I think in the breaking of existing institutions, there's a profound opportunity to think about what are the new institutions that we want to put in place. And I think starting to lay the groundwork now and starting to build those prototypes and think about what are the institutions that can take us to a more democratic, human empowering kind of future. I think there's a lot that can be done there. Two programs that we have at the Institute, in particular, looking at this is, one, how do we think about the distribution of power in our AI-enabled future? And because right now, the default trajectory is pretty centralizing in the way that this technology is being developed. And given the general purpose nature of the technology, it's being centralized across a variety of domains. So it's not just centralization of capital or political influence, it's also information flow. It's also steering us towards a monoculture where like there's no longer a diversity of sort of value systems or choice or agency. So we just did a grant program to solicit proposals and fund folks working to figure out what are ways we can combat that power centralization and enable a more sort of distributed, human empowering future. The other piece of this is the economic piece we've been thinking about a lot. As AI capabilities become, closer and closer to human level, and comparing that also with the rapid progress we're seeing on the robotics side of things, it's very clear that in the not too distant future, most of us, if not the vast majority of us, will be economically obsolete. And so there's both a program we're doing called the Windfall Trust, which is looking to see what are alternative mechanisms for distribution of AI benefit in the future to make sure that people are sort of all included in that. But there's also, not just from the economic piece of that, I think there is a certain amount of leverage that we have as humanity that is imparted to us by the sort of decentralized labor power that we have. And so when that's taken away, that it has a really scary potential to like erode the leverage that we as the collective have over the trajectory of society. So also figuring out what we can do now to lay a future where like we still all are maintaining that decentralized leverage over where our society goes.
Awesome. Well, let's get deeper into decentralization then. We were just at Edge City together, which is a pop-up city, and like, there's this continuous movement that is really picking up in steam that aims to explore non-traditional forms of governance or like living together. And perhaps there is the formation of precisely like new institutional structure for humans to do societies. And there was like a full week of what is called DAC, which is something that is really pushed by Vitalik in particular. I would be really interested to hear like what you found like interesting, if anything, but I think you did. What features are particularly like good like for you in defensive accelerationism, and it's also an acceleration that is defensive, decentralized, and democratic. So what do you think?
Yeah, it was my first experience being at a pop-up city, and I really highly recommend it. Like the format of having people from like very wildly different backgrounds and expertise coming together under like a general philosophy of alignment is, I think, a really powerful thing where new ideas can sort of blossom by nature of that multidisciplinarity that exists there. On the DIAC front, I'm also someone that really is a fan of that philosophy, in particular because it holds the tension and addresses the tension head-on of risk and benefit, right? And figures out like how do we can't ignore the risks and pretend they don't exist. We also can't ignore the benefits and pretend they don't exist. We need to charter a path where like these things are not in this sort of false dichotomy of you get one or the other. It's actually we can get both. And the way to get both is through making sure we're putting in sort of like the adequate safety tools. We're building resilient societies that are more resilient than the ones we live in today to potential perturbations in the future. And we're incentivizing the development of technology that yields benefit. And I think there's been a lot of tribalism that's sort of come up in the conversation around development of technology, that it's this or this. But I think that what I really like about DIAC is the idea that like you can have both, and here are concrete strategies to have both.
Cool. And I guess, I hope it's okay to bring this up. I was, something that Bruce said like at the very beginning of the opening presentation made me think also, about the idea of like stopping or opposing AI, which was really like, the Future of Life Institute is known for putting out this like open letter called Pause AI. And yeah, I wonder what you think like today of this approach. Is it like still relevant? Is it more like a call to, pay attention, or is it like something that is like a strategy or maybe a viable strategy only in some aspect? Like, what do you think?
Yeah, I think one of the number one sort of objectives is to have the societal conversation. And at that point, the conversation around risk wasn't really happening in the channels that it needed to happen, whether that be existing sort of governance institutions or broadly as a society that like, hey, we're starting to build something that could be pretty risky, but also pretty transformative, and like you should be clued in and have like a voice in which way this course of this technology develops. The idea there and why that was a pause and not necessarily stop, at the time it was we wrote the letter, was the idea that like we need to buy ourselves some time to have guardrails and like implement guardrails that help us get that both that safe future and that like accelerationist amazing future with technology. I think that in terms of reflecting on that today and like how the AI governance conversation has evolved, like regardless of what you think about the trajectory of AI development, like in these large corporations, the idea that there should be liability no different than anyone else creating any other technology, or the idea that we're putting in all these monitoring systems and saying, oh, we're doing these evaluations. Well, if they're all blinking red, what do you do and what's your plan? I still don't think there's a great answer to that. So I think like continuing the conversation around how do we mitigate risk where is still an important one to have.
For sure, extremely important. Some idea like in relation to that actually is that is very interesting is the idea of differential technology development, right? Like, okay, maybe we try to like put the reins on something while we develop something that will like make it so that we can build that technology safer and better, which is something important to have in mind as a possibility. Actually, we have 1 minute left, so maybe my question for you would be, what's like the call to action? Like, what's your what can people do like today to support like building AI in the right direction, like especially in the context of being at DEF CON, like this conference? Is there like, yeah, something you want to encourage people to do or think about?
Yeah, I think, you know, many people, and probably not the folks in this room, but there's many people who feel like, I'm not on critical path for AI development, therefore there's nothing I could do, or I'm not part of this conversation. But the reality is our future is going to be, every domain is going to be different and wildly different. And there's an opportunity that different could be better, or there's also an opportunity that different could be worse. And so whatever like domain you're working in, whatever space you're building in, like I really encourage you to, and to Trent's point, like it's really hard to imagine the magnitude of disruption that's coming, but to like try and lean into that and entertain that, and to think about what can you build in that wild future that is sort of coming towards us that can make that change that happens be the better one and not be the one for the worse.
I love the intellectual honesty here. It's a really enjoyable conversation. Thank you so much, Emilia and Lou. Is there one question from the audience? Only one, unfortunately, and then you guys can also reach out in the after session.
So to your last point here, so because you are mentioning, so what can we build? Yes, but it's also how should we build it? And I do not know if you noticed in Dr. Goertzel's, he had a big diagram, but on the bottom, he had creativity and kindness. I don't know if you have seen. So how do we build it to have kindness in itself? I think is more important than what we build. And I just want to know your take on this.
Yeah, I mean, that's something I've long felt with the AI conversation in general, is that like people bring up human nature, right? Like human nature is an obstacle, or reflect on how these systems have been developed so far, which has been quite divisive and incendiary by nature of the incentive structures that they were released in, when we think about narrow algorithms in social media or something like that. You could just as easily flip the script, right? You can build AI that brings out the better angels of our nature and helps us in moral progress as much as it does in technical and scientific progress. And so I would say that like, that's where the opportunity to build comes in, is like, how do I actually build that tool that steers us towards a more collaborative and cooperative path? And that's actually probably yields a society that's like better able to realize all the scientific stuff as well.